My name's Jean. My native name is Morning Dove, and I'm a Pequot native out of Bermuda. And make the change, Cleveland!
Segon, my name is Cindy.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeriel.
We are Haudenosaunee.
My name is Sundance. I am Muskogee.
My name is Devin. I am also Muskogee. Make the change, Cleveland.
Segon, Oswega ni Dawageno, Kunyonkahaga ni Wako Hun Segoto. My name is Cindy. I am Haudenosaunee, or Iroquois, for the Mohawk Nation. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about Indigenous Peoples Day Committee and why we worked and how we worked to abolish Columbus Day and replace it with Indigenous Peoples Day here in Oberlin, Ohio. It all started at a Columbus Day protest on October 10th of 2016. There was a man named Three Eagle Cloud who was holding the protest and had set up some gallows, and there were 13 nooses on the gallows, and he explained that they were for the 12 apostles and for Jesus, and that was how his people were hung and slaughtered by the Christians in Hispaniola, or common day Haiti. It was very touching and very emotional display, and at that protest, Three Eagle Cloud announced that he had been fighting to abolish Columbus Day on the national level for more than 50 years, and he was weary and he just couldn't do it anymore, and that he was retiring. And from that protest, one woman who was there, Mary Hammond, who was at that time the pastor of Peace Community Church in Oberlin, she got together with another lady there, Jean Fogo Simon, Morning Dove, and myself, and that was how the Indigenous Peoples Day Committee of Oberlin started. We met approximately 1 month after that initial protest and began to plan and gather information on how we would approach the city council and see if we couldn't abolish Columbus Day by the following year. The reason we did so is because we feel it's important to tell the truth about our nation's history. It's vital. We discover most of what we've been taught is embedded in mythology and folklore, and continues to be evidence that we reject the treaties with Native Americans and disregard their rights. And it's chronicled in places that, like Standing Rock. I think probably most people are very familiar with what happened in Standing Rock, and it's just one more time that we violated treaties with, our government violated treaties with Native Americans. So we decided a three-faceted approach. One was to talk about the people who were here first, who occupied the land that Oberlin sits on now. And that is the Erie Ohona, or the Erie tribe, also known as the Cat Nation. They lived in the area from Erie, Pennsylvania to present-day Toledo, south of the Lake Erie. They lived in longhouses, or surrounded by palisades, or kind of tall fences with stakes on the top. And they were farmers and hunters. They grew corn, squash, and beans that are also known as the Three Sisters crops. They were their staples. They hunted raccoon and beaver. They used their pelts and even wore raccoon hats, and were called the Cat Nation for that reason. So the Erie Ohona occupied this area until about 1640, when the Beaver Wars started with the Iroquois. The Iroquois wanted to spread westward to look for new hunting ground for beaver pelts that they were trading with the French. So they started to move and kind of push their way west, and they reached Erie in 1655. So the Erie, in an effort to keep peace with the Iroquois, sent delegates to meet with the Seneca at their capital. The Iroquois are made up now it's 6 nations, but at that time it were 5. The Mohawk, the Onondaga, Oneida, Seneca, and Cayuga. So they met up with the Seneca, and there was an accident wherein one of the Erie delegates accidentally killed according to the history, accidentally killed one of the Seneca delegates. And although they apologized, the Iroquois said no and declared war on the Erie. The French provided the Iroquois with firearms, and they easily defeated the Erie tribe. Now they typically, after a war, would adopt the defeated tribe into their own. They would allow them to live among their people, but they lost their language and their own way of being, but they were kind of immersed back into the Iroquois. Some other did escape to other nations south, but the Erie, at that point, who they were as a people, were gone. And this area where we are now in Oberlin was only used as hunting ground. There weren't really settlements, there weren't really villages to speak of. So when Shippard and Stewart landed here in 1833, they were on Iroquois hunting ground. The second facet of why we wanted to, of talking about abolishing Columbus Day is Columbus himself and who he was. So Columbus landed in Hispaniola, which is current modern day Haiti. When he arrived, there were approximately 3 million people lived there, according to anthropologists. 20 years after he arrived, there were about 60,000. And after 50 years, there were none. The Arawak people were obliterated by disease, slave trade, and slaughter. In his own journals, Columbus talked about the Arawak people as peaceful and generous. They did not use weapons. There was no crime nor prison, and that 50 men could defeat the Arawak people, and they could be used as slaves. He said they would make fine slaves. This is in his journals. You can read his journals. And that's just what he did. He went back to Spain. He got more people. They came back and enslaved more than 5,000 of the people were sent back across the Atlantic to be slaves, and tens of thousands were enslaved in Hispaniola to mine gold. Columbus supervised the sexual slavery of women and girls. In his journals, he bragged about defeating a woman, tearing her down until she would automatically submit to him. It was horrible. And he talked about procuring girls 9 to 10 years old, preferred age for his men. Now, one of his men, Bartolome de las Casas, was disgusted by him. It was, sometimes people will say, well, that's how things were then. He was being judged. We're judging him with our standards now at how they lived then. No, he was disgusting then as well. Bartolome de las Casas wrote in his own journal, and I'm going to read a quote for you. He said, "Such inhumanities and barbarisms were committed in my sight as no age can parallel. My eyes have seen these acts so foreign to human nature that I now tremble as I write." End quote. He was mortified by the cruelty of Columbus, and he began documenting and eventually separated himself and became a priest and did not work any longer with Columbus, but instead tried to help the indigenous people. We don't feel that we should honor Columbus and celebrate the legacy of genocide against indigenous people. It perpetuates an ongoing racism against indigenous people, and it's harmful to children and to non-native children. Often Native Americans are seen, Indians is the name the colonizers gave them, and when people think in terms of Indians, they think of the past. They feel like those people are extinct, but we're not. We are here. and we have traditions, we have a culture that we want to share with our own children and with our community, and we are not relics of the past. We are here, and it is harmful to my children, to my future grandchildren, for them to be seen as objects or mascots. The other thing that we approached when we talked to City Council was about the current Native crisis. So I said we're still here, but what does it mean to be Native today? And so I think that it's important that we kind of look at what the successful dismantling of the family done by our government has done to Indigenous culture, to Native culture in our country. So there are disproportionately higher rate of poverty, unemployment, and incarceration in Native communities. Domestic violence and neglect unfortunately run rampant, and like I said, that's part of the nature of the government taking Indigenous people out of their homes and forcing them into boarding or assimilation schools. They dismantled the family. People didn't get to have their children or raise their own children. It was compulsory for them to send their children away, and this has had a generational cyclic effect on family, and people are learning how to reconnect with their family and through tradition in meaningful ways. Substance abuse starts at a much younger age with Native children. 10th grade is the average age for a non-Native child to experiment with drugs or alcohol. In Native communities, that is as young as 6th grade, with daily use by 8th grade. Native communities experience a 1/3 dropout rate, and it's youth suicide rate is 3 times the national average. It was deemed a national emergency in Canada, the amount of First Nations kids who were committing suicides. It's heartbreaking. There is a bit of an identity crisis, finding a balance between their Native culture and tradition and fitting into a mainstream society. Leaves young people with leaves with some difficulties in finding their own identity. Intergenerational trauma is a big deal. Scientists now say that, we carry in our genes the effects of trauma. Just like if you've heard, of someone who, it's almost like they were born knowing how to play piano. Their family is musical and they're just born with this kind of inclination, or they are geared toward music, for example. The same thing, unfortunately, happens with things like trauma. People are more susceptible. And it's cyclic in nature, and it comes from forced assimilation, boarding schools that had physical, mental, and sexual abuse as punishment. Boarding schools were compulsory in the United States and Canada until as late as the 80s and 90s. I think that most people don't realize that. So in closing, I would just like to say that we don't feel that Columbus is a hero or a role model that should be lifted up. We don't feel that there should be statues. We don't feel that we should be celebrating his day. It is nothing against Italian culture or people. It is against this man specifically. He was a monster, and on June 5th, 2017, the Indigenous Peoples Day Committee of Oberlin, which was myself, Mary Hammond, Jean Fogo-Simon, and high school senior Joella Byron-Dixon, my daughter, also joined the committee, and we became a women-led intergenerational group and made history. And on August 21st, after several meetings, August 21st, 2017, Oberlin did pass Indigenous Peoples Day here. I am incredibly proud of the work that we did, and I am incredibly proud of the city of Oberlin for acknowledging and taking a step towards restorative justice in regards to Indigenous peoples. We have a great support team who have helped us along the way, and we thank them. And it was certainly not just the four of us. It was a lot of work. Student representatives who have helped us along the way. The Students for Energy Justice at Oberlin College who help us to put on our celebrations. We're very thankful, and thank you very much. We hope that you enjoy the day celebrating First People.
Thank you to you, people wabe. Nasa aking kinukaman, suge uwenge uwe. Good afternoon. My name's Savannah. I'm from the Valley of Cottonwood Trees. I'm also Omaha. Thank you for coming.
Elders tell us that all ceremonies, be they tribal or personal, must be entered into with a good heart so that we can pray, sing, and walk in a sacred manner and be helped by the spirits to enter the sacred realm. The first four directions are the four main directions of the compass: east, south, west, and north. When a Native American prays to the four directions, it is a prayer to the spirits of the world, to life and the great spirit that encompasses the four directions and everything that is. The medicine wheel is a symbol that incorporates the four directions. Its spokes point east, south, west, and north. The four quarters are colored white, yellow, red, and black, representing the races of man, the seasons, and the stages of life from childhood to old age. The circle is the earth, the moon, and the planets. It is the circle of life in all creation. The circle is traveled clockwise, following the motion of the sun and the sky. In addition, we will honor three more directions: the sky and our creator above us, the earth, our mother beneath our feet, and ourselves, the direction within. By honoring all of these directions, we will have honored all that is. We first acknowledge the east direction, the direction of the sunrise and new beginnings. Each new sunrise brings us new light and new opportunities to grow in wisdom. We ask the grandmothers and grandfather of the East to always place light in our words and in our hearts and on our paths. The East is the direction of the child, so we pray for the young of the world that they may grow and live in peace and become good leaders for our tomorrows. We acknowledge the eagle who sits in the East and carries our prayers to the Creator. We now acknowledge the South direction, the direction of summer warmth and abundance. We ask our grandmothers and grandfathers of the South to bring us the warm winds of compassion, whose fragrance speaks of distant springs and summer days, to melt the ice that can gather around our hearts, dissolve our fears, melt our hatreds, and kindle our love into flames of true and living realities. South is the direction of the woman, and we honor them as the gateways through which our spirits come to earth, and we ask that women everywhere be protected, for they are sacred. We next turn to the west direction, the direction of the setting sun and of the autumn season. We ask the grandmothers and grandfathers of the West to remind us that the end of our days is no sadder than the end of a single day, and that the end is often better than the beginning. West is the direction of the elders, and we honor our elders as the keepers of wisdom and teachers of patience. West is also the direction of our ancestors, and we proudly acknowledge those who have gone before us and ask for their guidance so that we can live our lives as we should. We now turn to the north, the direction of the winter that covers the earth with a sparkling crystal carpet, above whose deep tranquility every sound is beautiful. We ask the grandmothers and grandfathers of the north to temper us with strength and withstand the biting blizzards, yet make us thankful for the beauty which follows and lies deep over the warm earth in its wake. West is man's protection, and we honor men as the providers and protectors of the family and of the nation. We now raise our eyes to Father Sky and to our Creator. As we look upon the day's infinite blue sky, or admire the countless stars of the night, we are reminded that the Great Spirit is vast, beautiful, and majestic beyond all of our knowledge or telling. But we are also reminded that the Great Spirit is no further from us than the tilting upwards of our heads and the raising of our eyes. We offer our thanks for all things of creation and for being allowed to be a part of it. We offer thanks for the visions and dreams that help us remember who we are and why we are here, and ask that all people be given this wonderful gift. We ask our Creator to be with us today. We now look downward upon Turtle Island, our source of life. We give thanks to our Mother Earth for all we have, our food, our water, air, shelter, and so many beautiful beings who are our brothers and sisters. We ask that we always remain aware and we are always interconnected in the web of life, for there are too many who are blind to this fact. As our mother, the earth has shown us much patience in our greed and thoughtlessness, but we now know better. We ask for the strength to defend Mother Earth when she needs it, and as any grown child should defend their mother. We promise to always walk softly upon her face, for underneath our feet and the roots of the trees, the flowers and the grasses, and there can be no greater aspiration than to strive for a deep respect and connection with all of our relations. Finally, we look within and acknowledge and honor our own spirits. We often don't consider ourselves to be of value or to be important, but we are. The Great Spirit, the Great Creator, is in all of us. We are an essential part of life. We are life in action, loving, moving, and growing. In our center is the home of our heart. May we always return to this place so that we may know the meaning of our journey. From here, the center of our being, we can reach out to all directions and to all of our relations. However, we must always remember, be humble, for we are not the center of creation. We must always listen to our hearts, the tiny elder within us who can never lie and never mislead us.
I'm Melissa Rambo, Lakota Cayuga, and I'm going to be doing a jingle dress dance.
Welcome. My name is Mary Hammond, and this is my husband, Steve Hammond, and we are retired co-pastors from Peace Community Church. I was part of the original Indigenous Peoples Day Committee that worked to, in 2017, to abolish Columbus Day here in Oberlin and change it to Indigenous Peoples Day. The other members of that committee included Jean Fago Simon, Cindy Byron Dixon, Jeriel and Joella Byron Dixon. And we are indebted to Sundance and Three Eagle Cloud and many others who have gone before this committee began its work. And Three Eagle Cloud did a 2016 Columbus Day protest in Tappan Square that was very powerful and got Cindy, Jean, and I ultimately together to work on this project. Oberlin was the first city or town in Ohio to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, and that was a major accomplishment. The litany that Steve and I are going to share I wrote in 2017 for the first service of reconciliation that was held on Oberlin's Indigenous Peoples Day that year. There are no words in the English language adequate to confess the impacts of white settler colonialism on the indigenous people of this nation and this world.
The first step in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is to admit that we have a problem.
We come to this fourth Indigenous Peoples Day in Oberlin, Ohio, and acknowledge that this nation was founded on white supremacy, forced assimilation, and genocide, much of this wedding Christianity and the colonization of the Americas.
This brutal legacy is continued in many forms to this day. The United States as a nation has held no formal hearings on these crimes of lasting magnitude. There has been no National Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There has been no societal reckoning.
Predominantly white churches sometimes set aside a Sunday a year for Native American Sunday to confess historical Christian complicity in this genocide while also highlighting Native contributions to our society. All the while, the white Christian church too easily continues to perpetuate white hegemony, failing to challenge the impact of white supremacy both in the past and today on people and the very planet itself.
The acts of governmental powers and hired paramilitary actors at Standing Rock reminded us that the oppression of indigenous people in this country continues in many violent forms, as does the oppression of the water and land our indigenous neighbors seek to protect on behalf of all peoples and all generations.
Words are so inadequate, yet we have to begin somewhere. So today we speak groans too deep to turn into language. We speak silence too profound to transform into speech. We voice our sorrow, our agony, and our grief. We voice our complicity in the structures of injustice.
Whether we call this a prayer or simply a heart cry, we long for it to be heard. The proof of its authenticity will come in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead.
The proof will come as we challenge dominant historical narratives and mythologies told from the standpoint of white settler colonialism, not from the standpoint of the nation's first peoples and others who have been suppressed and oppressed by white supremacy.
The proof will come as we work for truth and justice. The proof will come as we stand up and stand out again and again. May this 2020 celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day in Oberlin, Ohio, be a step along the process and a seed scattered in many, many places.
I invite you into some moments of silence and reflection on this reading, but even more on the issues that are raised in this reading on this day and in this time. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Billy Krobik-Faluski. I have Cherokee heritage on my mom's side and Russian heritage on my dad's side. I have pretty much my whole life chosen to follow the Cherokee side, and my flute journey began back in 1984 when I met Arnold Richardson, Sane Dose, at a powwow down in Loudonville, Ohio, at the Mohican powwow. In fact, one of the first powwows for that area. I had always been interested in my culture, but in this area at that time it was really hard to find anything at all. So when that first powwow started down there, I was drawn to it immediately, and I was blown away by the connectedness I felt there. But when I heard the flute for the first time in person, I knew then that the flute would be a part of my life the rest of my life. So having been a woodworker and a carpenter, I had to try to learn to make one. And there, at that time also, there was really no information on that to be had. It wasn't like it is today, where you can buy flute kits and there's computer programs and all that. So basically, I'm self-taught, and that was a good thing. It took me a long time to somewhat master it, because you never really master it. But to learn it that way was really a blessing, because it taught me patience. It taught me a lot of things in my life. The Native American flute is a relatively easy instrument to play. One of my biggest joys is putting it in the hands of somebody that thought they had no musical ability at all, and them finding out that they do have a song in their heart, and this flute would help them find that song. It's always a joy to see the expression on their face when they get that first clear note. It's like their heart swells and the flute becomes a part of them. That's one of the big joys for me. Aside from the joy I get in making them, I've kind of become known for intricate carvings. This particular one is a red-tailed hawk. And I do a lot of other, flutes or animal totems on them. I do loons, bears, wolves, eagles, of course, elk, different things like that. And it helps to put a certain spirit in the flute when you think about what's carved on the end. I'm partial to red-tailed hawks. For years in this area we had no eagles. They were just non-existent here in Ohio. Just recently they've come back in Ohio, but at one time the red-tailed hawk was the king, and I grew up seeing them, and there's just something very mystical and special about a red-tailed hawk. Okay, well, a little bit about the history of the flute. Back in the old days, a man would make a flute for courting, and how he would make the flute is it would be made by his hand measurements. For example, this block here we always call the bird. from the bird to the first finger hole is a fist. Then he would take a thumb to the center of each hole till he got to the sixth hole. The way I was taught, from the sixth hole, he would go 3 thumbs to what we call the 4 direction holes here at the end of the flute. This would give each man, by using his hand measurements, the flute would have its own unique sound. In the evenings, the men would go behind the lodges and they would play their flutes, and the women would come out and they would sit and they would listen to the men pouring their love out through their flutes. Each flute would have its own individual sound, so the women would be attracted to a certain sound, and that man would be known for that sound. So that's how the courtship ritual would begin. That's why for years and years they were called courting flutes, and they still are. So this one here in particular I did make with my hand measurements, so I will play a little bit of this so that you can hear what I call a grandfather tuned flute, in honoring the old way, how it sounds. So that's what a grandfather tuned flute using my hand measurements would sound like. Over the years I've made hundreds and hundreds of flutes, and people would always ask me, they would say, you know, what's the most favorite flute that you ever made? And I generally always answer, the one I'm going to start next week. I really don't know when I begin a flute. I don't predetermine what it's going to be or how it's going to sound. I let each piece of wood speak to me as it will. And a lot of times I'll walk through the woods and I'll see branches laying after a storm. I will pick the branches up, and if they want to be a flute, I'll take them home with me. They'll speak to me. They'll say, you know, I'd like to live again. And it's always an honor to take a fallen branch and bring it back to life. I've really enjoyed my flute making journey. I enjoy sharing it with people. I make my living making flutes. I will never call it work. It's not work, it's a living. An old elder, Hawk Littlejohn, used to say when he would sell a flute, he would say, that's groceries. And so it is today. Thank you for sharing this time with me, and if you wish to talk to me about a flute or more interested in them, feel free to contact me at crowbeak9@yahoo.com. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, this is Latanya Fenderson Warren, and I was asked to come here today to do a recording. So I'd like to thank everyone in the committee, and Indigenous Day Committee, and Miss Cindy and Miss Jean and Mrs. Gates and everyone else involved. And I hope you're enjoying their Saturday. I am as well. So what I'm gonna do is read a piece from, well, actually 2 pieces from my new book, When I Look Over My Shoulder. And the two pieces are going to be Where You At, and that's focusing on human trafficking and people coming up missing and things like that. As you know, that's a big problem in the indigenous community with women coming up missing, and it's a big problem, and it's everyone's problem. And also, on page 6 of my new book, and the release date is Indigenous Day, October 12th. So that was done on purpose, of course. Ode to Emmett, originally titled Until It's Healed. And I read that last year at Indigenous Day up at Tappan Square, along with Untamed Truth. So it's about, of course, it's Ode to Emmett Till and what happened to that teenager, that child. And then it also, in the end, talks about current events and things that we are dealing with right now. And also talks about Savannah's Act. It mentions Savannah's Act. So if these are things that don't sound familiar to you, you can always look it up and do your research and learn more about it. It's a big problem that we need to solve today. All right. So I think I'm gonna do Where You At, WYA. Now in the book, it's a lot of like texting type of acronyms and things like that, because that's what it relates to, is trying to reach someone over the phone and you can't get a hold of them and they're missing and you don't know what's going on. Okay, so here we go. I'm calling out to you. I don't know if you're near, don't know if you're far. I can't imagine you being in the back of somebody's car. Getting so worried because it's starting to get dark. I've been riding around the neighborhood. I didn't see anyone at the park. I keep calling, texting, I get no reply. Trying to think positive, but all I can do is cry. Your coworker said you didn't show up for your shift at 2. It's not like you to vanish out of the blue. Calls going straight to voicemail. I don't know what else to do. Somehow, some way, give me a clue. Sister, where are you? It's been hours and I haven't heard from you. I'm on my way to the police station. Hey, where you at? Please send me your location. We're checking the gram and FB for a post. Your MIA girl, gone like some ghost. Hopefully you didn't agree to meet for a blind date. You know, most of those profiles are fake and end up being a catfish or a first 48. Hopefully you didn't get a text from your ex wanting to hook up for sex. You know better than to hop into a random truck. I'm checking your phone, no such luck. Checking my phone, no such luck. Put the lever in the trunk. OMG, where can you be? Your whereabouts have become a real mystery. If you've been captured, I pray you break free and flee. Top speed to safety, safely back to me. Okay, so now more time has passed. We've got to move fast. Time to find out who saw you last. How is it no one saw a thing, heard a sound? I've been looking all around town. It's time to bring out the hounds. We need a whole party to search the grounds. No YOLO, but BOLO. Let's make our lost found. Peace. Okay, and so, as I said, the second poem is going to be, and that's the first poem in my book. When I look over my shoulder. And then down to page 6, we're gonna go with Ode to Emmett. Okay? Kill, kill, kill. Last words heard by a terrified teenager, Emmett Till. No justice for this murder. The pond should have been filled as an act of contrition for the innocent blood spilled. At a time when some killed blacks for a thrill, picnics, public hangings, truck dragging gives me the chills. Keeping body parts as souvenirs.
The thought makes me ill. Uncovering a history of hatred, facts our textbooks never reveal. Do you know why I pulled you over? Turn the car off. No sudden moves. Be still. Keep both hands on the steering wheel. Ignoring the ugly truth, choosing not to understand why we kneel. When your loved one has been taken and hurt, but your first concern is what color they were, tells me how you really feel. Breaking and entering. If the shooter resembled the victim, he would have been labeled a thug. I can't for the life of me understand how a citizen murders their neighbor in cold blood and the judge gives out hugs. Let's talk about Savannah's Act. Ladies of the tribe, 10 times more likely than the average to die. So where's the love? Peace. Well, thank you for sharing this time with me and letting me share my poems and my poetry with you. And of course, like I said, you can find both poems in my new book, When I Look Over My Shoulder. The release date, the official release date is October 12th, and it's also available on Amazon right now in paperback. And also, whenever you see me, most likely I'm going to have some copies with me. So feel free to say, I need a book. All right, well, enjoy your day.
To the Indigenous woman, I'm sorry we have not fought harder for you. For the woman and her baby left for dead by the police in her home while they gave a ride to her attacker back to his house. To the wife who took the beatings so her kids wouldn't have to. To the daughter who found a man as abusive as her dad. To the co-ed who will never go to the 9 again. To the restraining order as strong as the paper it's made from. And to the shelter with not enough beds. I give 1,000 sweats for victims, 1,000 doctorings for husbands, 1,000 prayer ties for courage, 1,000 meetings for silence, 1,000 songs for patience, and 1,000 fires for enough light to fill a room. To reflect off a mirror the size of the moon, just so we can see ourselves for what we are. So I dare you to protect them, Mr. President. I dare you to make laws for them, Senator and Representatives. I dare you to try to stop me, tribal leaders. I dare you to go look for me, police officer. For every 1,000 Native women in your district, 330 of them will be assaulted. 88% of the perpetrators will be non-Native, and every piece of every legislation needs a champion, but not all champions are leaders, and not all leaders are men, just like not all kisses are wanted, and not all laws are consensual. They trespass her body like they trespass this land. In the corner of a HUD home, in the back seat of a car, in a courtroom, in every hall of every government, we fail them. And the terrorist threat is in the same house, in the same car, goes to the same school, and works at the same job. And a threat 10 times more likely to murder her than anyone else. This war is at home. Living room battlegrounds, bathroom infirmaries, backseat trenches, fists like tanks. Under treaties of silence, she whispered to me, "Please, please stop. I am your wife. I am your sister. I am your mother. I am your daughter. You are supposed to protect me. You are supposed to be a warrior. Protect me from you, from him, from all of them. Tell me you have daughters. Tell me you don't want this for them. Tell me you won't joke about this with your friends. Tell me you won't forget we talk. Tell me you will do something. Do something."